all those to all the attendees who have joined in, thank you very much for again joining us this evening.
Have we started the webcast?
Yeah, actually they're starting it already.
Okay.
They're starting it already. Let's see how far they've gone.
I think it's live.
Live na, yan, naka-live na. Oh. Thank you very much. See, my goodness, it's happening.
So I'll leave space for your war stories, para meron rin interaction.
Walang ganon. Worldwide webinar to eh.
Lalo na yung mediation ni Very Worshipful Dennis na 5 minutes after he left, nag-away ulit.
Oh my gosh.
Then I'm just joking.
A lot of people know who that group is and will know.
Wag na. Exciting to kasi dispute resolution eh.
I know. And we got like about
and
situation.
And I did check the IMES syllabus. Parang wala eh. So it's good na we're taking it up tonight. Good evening, Most Worshipful Sir.
Worshipful.
Good evening, Most Worshipful Sir. Eto na naman kami.
Yun nga, dito naman tayo.
Most Worshipful Sir, maybe in 3 minutes, we'll just let the others who are in the waiting room to come in. We already have about 110.
Talaga?
Yes, sir. Who are
Very good. Mas marami ang nag-register ngayon.
Kaya marami atang mga gustong mag-mediate.
Maraming gusto ng chismis. So Kuya Dennis, sasali ka na. War stories nyo.
To everyone who are in this webinar, again, we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure to be on the third Wednesday of the month, and listen to our rockstar lecturer, senior grand lecturer, very worshipful Teodoro Calao IV, Kuya Teddy.
I'm gonna get even now, Kuya Dennis. Everyone, can we all congratulate our most illustrious new potentate of Mabuhay Shriners?
I'm just
installed.
I'm just here to serve.
2 weekends.
Congratulations, most illustrious.
Hindi, wala yatang most.
Wala lang. Illustrious pa rin. Hindi kasi si Kuya Teddy, hindi pa nag-shrine yan. Kaya mag-shrine na yan.
Si Kuya Oliver.
Ay, Kuya Oliver pala. Si Kuya Oliver. Kuya Teddy is a shriner already. And for this evening, we'll be discussing Masonic harmony and mediation skills. Okay, part of our lodge management lecture for this evening, and part of the efforts of our Most Worshipful Grandmaster to inform the brethren under the challenges of the pandemic. So we will be having all these discussions and all these lectures to keep us refreshed, of our Masonic learning and how we deal with within the craft of things. And this is always open to the public, just so everybody will be well informed of how we are handling things. So part of the discussion this evening will be, Kuya Teddy will be talking about the 7 building blocks of lodge harmony. He will be talking about how to resolve conflicts among brethren. Oh my goodness, this is very exciting. And he will be talking about acting as Masonic mediator, the role, the mediation process, and the practice tips. The reason why very worshipful SGL Teddy Calao is very, very proficient and very, very passionate about this thing is because his line is mediation, my goodness. And he's part of a council that was just recently installed, and he's handling public mediation in part of his practice as a lawyer. So we will be hearing it, right directly from the horse's mouth, as they say it, because he is the authority relative to mediation. Tingnan nyo naman. Pwede dia, saan ka tayo?
Kuya Teddy,
Hindi, nakainom ka na talaga yata.
Hindi. I just got in. My goodness, got from a meeting. And
nag-handle ka ba Kuya Teddy ng mediation sa MCLE?
Well, my course is arbitration. But I also practice mediation for family businesses.
Yes, good. Kasi hindi pa ako nakaka-encounter nga ng seminar about mediation sa Masonry. This
will be your first.
Yeah.
Dali.
Purposeful, Dennis.
MCLE, dami.
Yung background mo, yung virtual background mo, palitan na yan kasi may bago na tayo diyan na pinturado na yung sa taas. Yan.
Oo nga, sir. Na-realize ko rin, sir. Nakita ko. Maganda na eh. Mas maganda na ngayon. Yung
papadala kita ng bagong kopya.
Sorry. O nga pala. Maganda na. Mas maganda na, sir. Di hamak.
Yan. Papadala kita.
Maganda, sir. Lunch temple. I think, sir, we already have 125 registered in our webinar right now.
Okay.
And still building up. I think we'll reach about 150 more in this webinar this evening. And I think the brethren, most worshipful, sir, are very excited, maybe because of after the holidays, and now they wanted to listen and hear again what is new in the jurisdiction. And part of the event and part of the highlights of every webinar is always your message, most worshipful, sir. And every time they listen to your message, they know there is news that comes out of the message, and it becomes trending, sir. Nagiging trending after po yung deliver. So they will always ask if they can get a copy and everything. Pinag-uusapan po yan. So this evening po is again lively telecast by our very efficient cable tow team headed by its newly minted, very worshipful Harold Santiago.
Yes.
Our grand scribe. Tignan nyo naman po, nakikita po talaga ni Grandmaster yung necessity at importance ng pagbibigay ng tamang recognition sa mga taong nangangailangan ng ganun. At nire-recognize din po niya yung mga trabahong kinocontribute natin. Hindi lamang para sa mga personal na ganansya, kundi para din sa ating kabuwang masonriya. Yan po ay pinapasalamatan natin sa ating Grandmaster dahil wala po ata siyang kapaguran. Hindi po namin kaya ang kanyang energy, sa totoo lang. pag nagkaedad po ako ng konti, ganyan po sana yung gusto kong maging ako. Okay. Kuya Teddy, are you ready? Okay. Most worshipful sir, very worshipful sirs, without much further ado, we would like to open this evening our webinar, which is already our 9th webinar actually. Kuya Teddy, time flies so fast. Imagine this already the 9th webinar about lodge management, and we'll be talking about Masonic harmony and mediation skills. Again, this will be delivered in a while by our very competent and our authority in arbitration and mediation. Our very worshipful senior grand lecturer, very worshipful Teddy Calao. We are also joined in this seminar who will be talking about his mediation experiences. Our very worshipful, competent Assistant Grand Secretary, very worshipful Oliver Yabot. Si Attorney Yabot will also be discussing maybe some salient instances and circumstances
Hindi ako extra dito.
That happened and transpired, all these years. But before we start the lecture, of course, we need to hear the message of no less than our most worshipful Grandmaster. And this evening, I know he is very excited to communicate to each and every one of us. So we will be able to hear him directly and listen to his announcement that he has for the brethren, which I know again will become trending aside from the lecture after this evening in all our Viber groups in the whole jurisdiction. So without much further ado, most worshipful sir, are you ready po? Siniseta pata.
Thank you very much. Very worshipful, Dennis.
Our most worshipful Grandmaster, most worshipful Agapito S1 Jr., sir.
Very worshipful Oliver Yabot, our Assistant Grand Secretary. Very Worshipful Teddy Calao IV, our Senior Grand Lecturer, Very Worshipful Dennis Kunanan, our Chief of Staff. Brethren, good evening. Welcome to Series 8 of our third Wednesdays in the West, hosted by the Grand Lodge of the Philippines and made possible by the untiring efforts of our most able and knowledgeable Senior Grand Lecturer, Very Worshipful Teodoro Calao IV. We have come a long way since our first lecture in this series of webinars. We are now on our second cycle, this time focusing on the subject of lodge management. This being our first webinar for 2021, may I first wish all of you a happy, productive, and safe new year. Despite great odds, we managed to hurdle the very difficult year 2020 with good results. Among others, we have completed the transformation of the Grand Lodge building, lodge halls, and other premises and turned them into a structure of good order and beauty that we always strive for in Masonry. In response to COVID restrictions, we have also embraced the online technology in some of our essential business. We have digitized the business processes, including important files and documents of the Grand Lodge. And we do not fail to conduct Masonic education through webinar like this every month. And so, we have responded well to the current crisis, and we are now finishing up all reports for the extended term, which we shall submit to the incoming ANCOM. Yes, the ANCOM in Olongapo City this year will push through. No more postponement. We have just inspected the designated venue, and we are satisfied that it can sufficiently accommodate our delegates as the allotted exclusive space is big enough to maintain physical distancing for our attending delegates. But we also have to employ online technology to execute the ANCOM. We have to accept the fact that we can no longer do our usual large gathering in a single venue because of prevailing COVID-19 restrictions. We therefore have no other choice but to implement temporary adjustments in the ways we do our ANCOM. And I would like to outline these plans with you at this point so that you will know what to expect. First, the Grand Lodge will open in the ANCOM venue in Olongapo City and hold a physical ANCOM for only one day. That means all business, including election, shall be compressed or abbreviated to the barest minimum. Second, delegates shall be given the option to physically attend the ANCOM or register online. We shall devise and implement a credible system of remote voting, and we already know from the current experiences that online voting is doable and acceptable. This way, we will avoid mass gathering while technically enabling all delegates to participate in the ANCOM. For this matter, all voting delegates shall be required to register 30 days before ANCOM and indicate whether attending physically or online. The usual reports will be converted into digital kits which can be downloaded by the brethren in their mobile devices, just like our TCT reader. No more printed ANCOM kits. We shall be strict on health protocols and shall require all physical attendees to obtain swab test certificates 5 days before ANCOM. The ANCOM venue will also have swab testing on site, and all must undergo the procedure and pass it before entry. As I speak, the implementing details are being discussed with all concerned, and once finalized, we shall issue an edict on this, which shall be the first agenda in the ANCOM. Brethren, make no mistake about it. We shall hold the ANCOM one way or the other to ensure the continuity of our business and also to maintain the progressive system of our leadership. Let us remain positive and let us invoke the blessing of the great architect of the universe to keep us safe and enable us to perform all our duties and Masonic labors. In the meantime, the present topic that will be discussed by Venerable Teddy Calao, dealing on the topic of Masonic harmony and mediation, is very, very important. Of all business of the fraternity, dealing with internal strife is perhaps the most difficult and taxing of all Masonic duties. You know why? Because we seem to have forgotten how to maintain harmony where it matters most. We let arguments and misunderstanding blow out of proportions, and we keep on filing cases after cases every Masonic year. It is time to hone our skills on mediation, reconciliation, and good counseling so as to keep our conflicts at bay. And this webinar is intended to guide us on that subject. And so, have a productive session, my brethren, and magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Most Worshipful Grandmaster. Sabi na nga ba magte-trending na naman po ang inyong message ngayong gabi hanggang bukas sa lahat ng mga Viber groups at mga discussion groups. My goodness, brethren, you have heard it directly from our Most Worshipful Grandmaster. Tuloy po ang ating annual communication, and preparations are already moving and working on its way. So expect a historic annual communication this coming April, because this will be a hybrid activity under the current pandemic. Rest assured, this will only be happening now because we're trying to adapt, to the situation, and hopefully in the future things will normalize. But just the same, we will be having a new normal, as they say it. New normal in ensuring that each and every one of us will be safe and in good health condition. Okay, so. Apparently this evening I'm not your speaker, but we would like to thank again those who joined, and we'd like to thank the Cable Tow team, okay, for streaming. Very worshipful Harold was telling me you already have about close to 200, live watchers. I think 150 something, close to 160. In this webinar, Kuya Teddy, you already have 153, my goodness, who are already, I told you it will hit 150, who are already listening to you and waiting your lecture this evening. So with that, without much further ado, again, allow me to call on our incumbent senior grand lecturer, the Worshipful Teodoro Carlo Teddy IV, for his lecture about Masonic harmony and mediation. Go ahead, Teddy.
Thank you, very worshipful Dennis, and thank you, most worshipful sir, for your message tonight. I'm sure a lot of brethren are heartened by the fact that we will finally have our ANCOM after almost 1 year missing. So we're all looking forward to that. Good evening, brethren, both here good evening, brethren, here in the Philippines. Good afternoon and good morning to the rest of our brethren and guests across the world who are watching now. We are in our second cycle of Third Wednesdays in the West, and the topic of lodge management this evening, we will be highlighting Masonic harmony and mediation, something which, as most worshipful June has highlighted, takes up the majority of Grandmaster's time when they find out when they take office, because of the number of picks and clicks between brethren. So, what will we be taking up tonight? Basically, four things. First, uh, this is something that I checked with IMES, and it appears that it's not really covered in the syllabus. So we're going to integrate this going forward. I'm going to help them integrate this with them and maybe do a separate workshop. This is a topic that often is not properly developed during a Masonic term because we still don't have workshops, no? So hopefully that's going to change in the future, di ba, Kuya Dennis? So tonight we're going to look at four things that are important about this topic. First is, what do you mean by Masonic harmony? Very few brethren know that we have actually a fraternal conciliation system brought about by Edicts 82, 80, and 82A to 82E. And so we're going to be talking about that and try to understand what it is. And then using that knowledge, we're going to go into what it means to have fraternal harmony within the lodge. So many lodges don't have this, so they end up either dying or splitting. Hopefully, with tonight's information, we can do a little better in arresting that kind of behavior going forward. What I think we should really focus on tonight is the fact that we actually have a unique system of Masonic mediation that fits our philosophy, which I'll be discussing tonight. What not just the procedure provided in our edicts on how to do mediation and conciliation, but what do you actually mean when you say Masonic mediation, especially for brethren? And with that, we will go into something that very few brethren in the jurisdiction know, which is the fact that all harmony officers have this one tool that if they keep in mind, they will increasingly and greatly leverage their chances of achieving settlement. And that is what we call the harmony officer's triangular cornerstone. So we're going to go into that. And I know your first question, if it's a cornerstone, why is it a triangle? We'll answer that question later. And we'll end up with highlighting who are those who are the best in this field. What are the benchmarks of a wise Masonic mediator, the one that you should go to if, or you should prefer to be appointed if you end up with a dispute. Now, before I move forward, may I highlight, you will not be an expert on lodge management after this session. We are going very deeply into something that is a very wide ocean. That is a small corner of a very wide ocean. Okay? So we'll go into that in detail. But even if we go into it in detail, needless to state, it's much deeper than what I can cover in this 1 hour or 90 minutes that we talk about mediation. Now, before I go, as you know, I try to liven things up here. And I want to highlight that just this fourth quarter, we have managed to elevate standards of Masonic architecture with the refurbishments recently in the Plaridel Masonic Temple. The three pictures you see there are pictures of our new lodge rooms in Plaridel Masonic Temple, courtesy of the efforts of Most Worshipful June and the brethren who have contributed to make them what they are now. And I'm highlighting these pictures because you'll see later as we go to the polls and the subject dividers, I'm going to be taking a tour of what lodge rooms are around the world, mainly for our guests who haven't been inside. And also to the brethren to highlight that, you know, we're trying to make sure that lodge rooms now are conducive to actually doing Masonic work. And let me tell you, if you think the pictures are beautiful, you should go to Plaridel Masonic Temple and actually look at our latest lodge rooms. And hopefully we'll be doing that, improving and upgrading our facilities across the jurisdiction going forward. Okay, so with that, what are the topics we'll be talking about today? Just three major topics. First, harmony. What do you mean by Masonic harmony in the concept of the Masonic fraternity? Okay, we have a very specific meaning for that, and it is the foundation of one of our core tenets, which is brotherly love. So we're going to highlight how we promote Masonic harmony in the fraternity. And from there, we'll use that as a basis for looking at how do we proactively facilitate lodge harmony in our respective lodges before we end up with the basic stages or process tips for conducting Masonic mediation. Something that very few brethren and even many harmony officers have not been provided training in. So we'll not just go into the procedure provided by the edicts. We will also go into how you actually practice Masonic mediation within this procedure. The process is different from the procedure. With that, before I go, let me highlight the memorial in front of you is very very much symbolizes our topic today. It is the friend-to-friend memorial of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania in the Gettysburg battlefield in the United States. That symbolizes the many, as a matter of fact, numerous instances documented historically of Union and Confederate soldiers, despite being on different sides during the U.S. Civil War, helping each other when they were wounded or they were in need of assistance in the battlefield. This, what you see here, actually happened in Gettysburg. That's General Amistad, who's lying down. He's being assisted by Captain Henry Bingham. Captain Bingham is not a Freemason, but his superior, General Hancock, was. And when General Amistad, who was mortally wounded in the battlefield, found this out, he entrusted to Captain Bingham the effects so that General Hancock can get them and give it to General Amistad's family. So these are numerous instances highlighting that ideally, when despite the strife that we have in our everyday lives and our different partisan connections and sides, the end of the day, we always strive to be a brotherhood undivided. That's what the bottom of the memorial says. You have many positions in life. Some of them, because we have different interests, we have different. We find ourselves in different sides, but at the end of the day, we're all brothers, and we try to help each other out. With that, let's go now to our first poll. Kuya Dennis, are you ready? Our first poll for today, before we go to our first topic of harmony in Masonic fraternity, relates to something very few outsiders know, which is that Masons cannot file suit in court or other venues without first going through what we call fraternal conciliation. Okay, which is an amicable attempt to settle their differences with the help of other brethren. Okay? Now, that's not applicable in all situations, and we have 4 instances here where one of these actually requires that procedure to be followed before the suit is done. Which one of them is it here? Before you file suit, what we're highlighting here is you must engage in fraternal conciliation. In 3 cases here, that's not the case. Which is the case here where it is the case? Is it A, if you have a fight with somebody who is no longer brother but is an expelled member? Or is it B, an arbitration that's a private a dispute where you get a private judge, okay, involving a breach of contract between brethren of the same lodge doing business together? Okay? Or is it C, a criminal complaint for concubinage brought by a brother, against a brother, by his own wife, who is a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, one of our appendant bodies? Or is it D, alleged estafa on a brother who is a member of another regular jurisdiction recognized by GLP, but who resides in the Philippines? Very tricky to. Lot of potential issues Is it C, concubinage? Most likely, because we're dealing with a Masonic widow here, diba? Widow in the sense that the brother is is failing to live up to his oath, or is it with that expelled member, or how about the same brethren fighting each other, like arbitration, or is it brother who's here but from another jurisdiction who's currently resident in the Philippines? What do you think, brethren? We have 163 now, so let's give time for them to do their answers. I understand, Kuya Dennis, there are about 230 uh, in our watching this webcast. You can also take a guess using the chat function there. Now, I want to highlight, if this sounds new to you and you're a brother, don't worry. This is often a corner that is unexplored in Masonic education. So it's okay if you find this confusing. We will explain it later. But in the meantime, take a guess. Before you file a suit in just one of these instances, you must engage in fraternal conciliation. That means you must make a good faith attempt in settling your dispute with the assistance of a brother, okay, who is not involved in the dispute. So which of these areas is that? We just hit 52%, Kuya Dennis?
Yes, correct. Maybe once we hit 60%.
Okay. I
55.
know this is a tough question because I don't think you want to answer it, right?
On.
This is a challenging question, I have to admit, because we rarely get into this, but this is important. There are a lot of brethren who do not know of this, and then they end up filing. If they do so, you will find out later. And if you refuse to engage in Masonic conciliation, and that means mediation with a harmony officer, that can constitute Masonic conduct. Especially if the brethren the brother you are fighting knows of this requirement and wants to engage in conciliation. So this is
Okay.
very important.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
already nakakapag-practice na rin yung mga brethren kung paano boboto pagdating sa anggulo.
Okay.
May question tayo sa floor at naka-online sila. This is one of those mga
Yeah.
circumstances that they will be encountering. At pag sinabi natin na at a certain time we will stop the poll, they will stop the poll at a certain time, di ba?
Okay.
So maybe 30 seconds more, that's 5 minutes of voting, will end the polls. A lot of those who are tuned in to us now really wanted to talk, huh? They really wanted to share their thoughts.
That's for those in the webcast. My recommendation is always try to join the webinar so that we can include you in the poll that's going on now.
Okay. In 2 seconds. Okay. End polls. Okay.
65%. Okay.
Let's share.
Daming ayaw mag-guess. Okay. Here are the results. I hope those in those watching the webcast can see them. The one with the least number of answers relates to expelled members. That is correct. It's not A. It is not A because that expelled member is no longer a brother. Therefore, the requirement no longer applies to him. Neither is it C, obviously, because the wife, while she may be your boss, even though she's a member of the Order of Eastern Star, is not a brother or a member of the craft. Okay, so clearly it's not A or C. With that, I must highlight here that the majority of you chose B, which is arbitration of a breach of contract between brethren of the same lodge doing business together. Here is where you must be capable. I can change that. I can put there mediation or arbitration. It's the same. Arbitration is you go before a private judge, you contractually highlight to that private judge that whatever you decide, we will respect it. So it's not a court. It's a private judge. That's an arbitrator. Mediation, you go before a mediator, you're still deciding. You will still decide how you resolve your dispute, but that mediator will help you. Whether it's arbitration or mediation, because it's a private dispute resolution process, it is not subject to the fraternal conciliation requirement, because you will see that Edict 82 only applies to suits brought before public agencies like courts, quasi-judicial agencies, and other administrative bodies of the state. Okay? So B is wrong. Now, that leaves you with roughly 16% to answer D. And here, many of you, and maybe even Kuya Dennis and very worshipful Oliver shocked. How can this be? He's not a member of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. That is because of two important tenets. I'm sorry, two important principles. First, the brother is a member of the craft, in the sense that he is a member of another regular jurisdiction recognized by the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. And second, he resides in the Philippines. As you know, regular Grand Lodges have this principle of exclusive territorial jurisdiction. If you were with us during the last webinar last month, we highlighted that within this Masonic jurisdiction, all members of regular Masonic lodges fall under the jurisdiction of the Grand Master. Therefore, in this situation, D is the correct answer. That brother, okay, can require Masonic conciliation. And then you might ask, but we can see that for the brother who's GLP, it's easy to discipline him if he refuses. What about the brother who's a member of, who's actually from a foreign jurisdiction? How can he be subject to our processes? The answer there is simple. If he refuses to recognize that fraternal conciliation is required here in the Philippine Masonic jurisdiction, the Grand Lodge, through our Grand Secretary, can file a complaint with his Masonic jurisdiction so he can be disciplined by his Grand Master. Okay, so, brethren, I understand. This sounds confusing. Let's therefore go now to this next topic so that hopefully we will erase that confusion. And that is harmony and the Masonic fraternity. Before that, like I said, this is if you go to, I think it's Stafford Hall, Kuya Dennis, in Singapore. That's the kind of lodge room you see there. This is the United Grand Lodge of England's primary Masonic Hall. Like I said, I'm highlighting here Masonic halls around the world to show that, you know, if you've seen our three rooms, we're moving up to global standards in terms of Masonic architecture. Okay, so let's talk about then this concept of Masonic harmony and fraternal conciliation in particular. Okay, so first, what do you mean by Masonic harmony? Harmony, okay, as we know it in the craft, is the foundation of brotherly love. Okay, that is an integral theme of our craft ritual. Okay, the very first line, for those who are guests, you will go through what we call a perambulation. What that is, that's for you to end up going through if you join us. But in the perambulation, the first line of the senior deacon is this: behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And in all three degrees, we have the final benediction, which always has that phrase, may brotherly love prevail. Harmony is the foundation of this cardinal principle of brotherly love. And that is why we have what we call a fraternal conciliation system that was introduced by Edict 82 of Most Worshipful Puno, as further developed in 4 subsequent edicts by our Most Worshipful Galvez, Pagotan, Anyag, and Rason. And that fraternal conciliation system that we have has 2 pillars. 2 pillars that we can describe as highlighted by the two pillars that fellow crafts witness when they enter upon the conferral of the second degree. Okay? You'll see, when you come in, there will be two pillars in front of you. One is stylized with the letter B. That's to your left. And the other to your right has a gigantic letter J, assuming they have the correct pillars as stylized. Many brethren, because this is just their second, uh, uh, this is the second stage of their entry into Freemasonry, they're struck immediately by those pillars. But unfortunately, some of them, because of the excitement, are not able to get all of the meanings. So for many brethren, the B and the J mean something else. Okay? It has nothing romantic or sexual in nature. Okay? If you fail to have gotten it during the lecture, those two pillars mean Boaz and Hakin. And they constitute the pillars of what we call the fraternal conciliation system. Pillar Boas relates to the fact that we have fraternal conciliation requirements that we must follow before we engage in further strife with or shepherding our disputes through the public agencies. So that relates to a condition precedent because we are Masons. Pillar Jakin, on the other hand, okay, relates to the fact that we must follow this process of amicable settlement in good faith. Okay, what do we call that process? We call that the Masonic mediation process. And that was institutionalized with the creation of the Masonic Temple of Harmony. Okay, what you see on your right, top right, is the 5 points of fellowship. Okay, literally, when we embrace each other, we are talking first and foremost of brotherly love as developed by these two pillars. Why are they called Boaz and Jakin? Well, we'll see them, okay, later when we go through these two pillars separately. But first, let me highlight. When we go to the Masonic mediation process and the Masonic Temple of Harmony, it was institutionalized with the creation of the office in all lodges of Harmony Officer. Okay, there is a historical basis for the role of Harmony Officer, and that can be found in the classic Roman office of intercessor. Subsequently, as the empire developed, there were different names for this office, but that's the classic title of one who intervenes, okay, to facilitate the amicable resolution of a dispute between parties. Now, in modern private dispute resolution, we have the parties needing to agree, okay, to having in general, to having the mediator come in. But the Roman office of intercessor, his intervention sometimes was brought about by the Roman Empire when it felt that, that private pick or private dispute needed to be pushed along to settlement. Okay? Gradually, with the development of operative craft lodges, the ones, our brothers who could actually create various buildings and temples, that role of intercessor, which subsequently we also called conciliator or mediator, was integrated with the worshipful master because it was part and parcel of his mentoring functions to brethren who were developing as Masons. Okay? So the office gradually came into disuse, and the term intercessor came to have religious connotations. Sort of like also the name worship, the title worshipful. We call each other worshipful because it is an old English term from the United Kingdom, which means respectful. Intercessor, in its classic Roman sense, means conciliator or mediator. But if you look at the modern version of the word now, it actually means praying so that God will intercede for you. Okay? or for your intentions. So maybe that's the reason why we ended up with the title of harmony officer. I don't know. But if you look at our classic title, it's intercessor, conciliator, and mediator. The new edicts 82A, 82B, and 82C highlights the creation of this office. And the harmony officers, okay, RD in turn, constitute the backbone, okay, of that Masonic Temple of Harmony. But before we get to them, we get to go to that other pillar which creates these mediation cases, which we call the is symbolized by the fellowcraft. What we see in the fellowcraft ritual as the pillar boas are two fraternal conciliation requirements. Okay, this is the subject of our poll question earlier. There are two fraternal conciliation requirements incumbent on all Freemasons before they engage in other litigation, okay, in public agencies or a Masonic trial. They must have a good faith attempt to engage in amicable conciliation and mediation with a brother. Okay? Edict 82 is the original conciliation requirement. And if you read it, it's very clear. Before filing any administrative, civil, or criminal case, okay, before any, take note, government agency, okay, quasi-judicial agency, or regular court, just those three, the complainant must notify the Grand Secretary that he is doing so and submit to a reasonable opportunity to mediation and conciliation. Without that, if he fails to do so, that is unmasonic conduct. He could be expelled, particularly if it is, for example, if the suit is a nuisance suit and done in bad faith. Edict 82 is very powerful, so it's something that you should not ignore. Subsequently, Edict 82-D of Most Worshipful Razon extended this requirement to all Masonic trials. Okay? So now it is a condition precedent for all Masonic trials involving brethren. Okay? Involving brethren. Obviously, you know, brethren, Most Worshipful Bumble Tolentino issued an edict expressly making unmasonic as providing as unmasonic conduct if a Mason is unfaithful, okay, to his wife. Obviously, because the wife is not a Mason, these requirements do not apply. But if it's two brethren, then 82-D applies. So it is applicable to administrative, civil, and criminal cases cognizable by Philippine law, or cases subject to Masonic trial. In short, you must have a good faith attempt at amicable negotiation between members of the craft as assisted by another brother. If they don't do that, if they refuse, then it's unmasonic conduct. Okay? So it relates to those types of cases. It does not, however, relate to private ADR cases. That's why the answer of arbitration or mediation in a private setting is incorrect. Mediation, because in the first place, it would be the same thing, effectively. So there's no reason why you should have a mediation with a brother first if you can get a mediator who's not a non-Mason and you're doing that with him or her. Arbitration, there's no requirement yet because it's not provided by both edicts. Why would that be rational? Well, it's because the parties previously agreed that instead of going to courts, they will settle their dispute privately with the private judge. So maybe that's one reason why it's not covered. Okay, so scandal is prevented, and maybe because with arbitration, the parties just want to resolve it and continue with doing so, with the relationship without having to go to courts. Okay, one thing that's crucial here is the term compulsory. What does compulsory mean? It means you just have to show a good faith attempt. There is no requirement. I must highlight this. There is no requirement that you must settle. Okay, so if you believe as a brother that the other brother is in bad faith. Okay? While you must submit to conciliation, you don't have to settle. What will happen is that the Masonic Temple of Harmony or the District Temple of Harmony will issue a certification that your settlement was not achieved so that you can now proceed to the regular courts if you want to. Okay? Now, why is this symbolic of the pillar boas? Because for those of you who go through our initiation, passing and racing, in our passing stage, it will be highlighted to you that the pillar boas highlight strength. Okay? Strength. And the strength of our fraternity is our brotherly love, unity in being. To preserve that strength, we must commit ourselves to do these conciliation requirements. It's a way to preserving that original characteristic highlighted by this memorial. A brotherhood undivided. That is why the pillar boas is symbolic of that requirement. Let's now go to the other pillar. That's just one pillar of our Masonic conciliation system. The other pillar is the pillar Jakin. Okay? Which you will know if you pass into the fellow craft. As a fellow craft, Hakin symbolizes to establish. So here, we're not talking of a state. We are talking of a process. And what is that process? That process is founded on, it is a biblical reference. Okay? Boaz and Akin, it is a biblical reference to God's promise to King David. It's actually a quote in the Bible that in strength, quote, in strength will I establish this man's house and kingdom forever. In strength. What is the strength? Brotherly love. In strength will I establish. What will you establish? God's kingdom forever. Love for everyone, not just agape, okay? But all forms of love. Okay? So here, to establish means the process. Unity through the exercise of brotherly love. And how do you exercise that? Through what we call the Masonic mediation process. How is that process conducted? Through what we call, it is governed by the Masonic Temple of Harmony, which in turn has district temples of harmony, which is composed of lodge harmony officers. Okay? The Masonic Temple of Harmony was established and is currently chaired by the Deputy Grand Master with 8 other directors to govern this Masonic mediation process. And the process is done through what we call a Masonic mediation procedure. Okay? What is that procedure? If, for example, you end up needing to comply with the fraternal conciliation requirement, or you have a pick with another brother, okay, you can file with the District Temple of Harmony a request for mediation. And the District Temple of Harmony will now appoint a mediator. Usually, expressly, it's your lodge harmony officer, but in some cases, in order to attain more objectivity, maybe it can be another harmony officer in the same district. Okay? So after you do that, the appointment is made. The parties are supposed to provide summaries of the matter in dispute so that the harmony officer or harmony officers can conduct the mediation sessions. And therefore, if there's a settlement, they enforce that settlement, or if there's no settlement, they issue a certification of the conduct of proceedings so the parties can bring it to a public agency if they want to. Now, I want to highlight what I just described you as highlighted by this arrow here on this slide is the procedure. Okay? It is the procedure for engaging in a good faith attempt at Masonic conciliation before you file litigation in a public agency or before you conduct Masonic trial. It is not, and I want to highlight, it is not, okay, the Masonic mediation process. The procedure is different from the process. This is why many times we hear anecdotally, many brethren don't see the value in Masonic mediation. Not because they did not follow the procedure, but because the harmony officer was not trained in the Masonic mediation process. Something that we plan to address going forward. Okay? So, what is this Masonic mediation process? We will be talking about that uh, towards the end of this lecture, in the third part of this presentation. Okay? But now, at least, you get to see there are two reasons why you should or are required to engage in Masonic mediation and conciliation. And that's provided by the two fraternal conciliation requirements. When you engage in it, you go through the district Temple of Harmony, who will assign a Lodge Harmony officer or officers to handle the matter. Who are these Lodge Harmony officers? Okay, they are very expressly past masters of the lodge, okay, who are elected by brethren for a term of 3 years. They must commit to dedicate time and serve in the role, and they possess 3 functional attributes as provided by the edict creating the office. One is a deep sense of objectivity and fairness. Second, they must be independent-minded, not susceptible to being cajoled to do something. Okay? And third, they must be creative, okay, in finding solutions. Okay? First thing that is often asked when we talk about Lodge Harmony officers during Masonic educations, why are they the only Lodge officers who serve 3 years? That is because you have to go look at the functional attributes of the office. The brethren are elected to 3 years primarily for 3 reasons. One, you want to ensure that they are more objective and that they are not beholden to any past or current master. Right? Second, you want to allow them, ensure that the process is more fair. Why? Because they cannot simply be replaced by the incumbent worshipful master. And third, you want to make these brethren make sure that they have a strategic perspective. Okay? Not just settling disputes, but proactively addressing potential disharmony when they see it. That is why we say that the office has 2 roles. The formal function, which is when they serve as mediators in mediations assigned by the district Temple of Harmony. That's the formal function provided in the edict. But also, brethren, they have an implied function. And that implied function is they must proactively build lodge harmony in the respective lodges and address disharmony between brethren as supervised and directed by the lodge's worshipful master. So they're not just reactive, they must be proactive, and we'll get to that immediately after this section. Okay, so brethren, I hope you understand now the real meaning of the B and the J for those of you who forgot it. Okay, those pillars, Boaz and Joaquin, highlight also our fraternal mediation procedure. Okay, and the 2 fraternal conciliation requirements that all Freemasons must observe. We require that they observe because there is strength in unity, okay, and it helps preserve that strength. And how we do that is we engage in the process as supervised by the District Temple of Harmony. On a final note, brethren, we highlight many times Masons, rightly so, who are political leaders or business leaders. Very rarely do we highlight Masons who are in non-government organizations or civil society Because it's very hard sometimes to recognize that they are that they are also worthy of Masonic distinction. Well, you can't make that argument for this brother in this slide. For those of you who don't know him, Brother Henry Dunant, okay, he is the founder of the International Red Cross movement, okay, and he's here not just because of that. He's here because I think he's the ideal example of a harmony officer. He's one of the he's a brother who has been uh, awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, primarily at his efforts at bringing hospital services during conflicts. So that's Brother Henry Dunant, and all Harmony officers, large Harmony officers, should see him as a model when they do their office. Okay? So again, one of the, we don't highlight our brethren in NGOs and civil societies. Here's your Nobel Prize winner to highlight the many more of the many Masons who distinguish themselves in the service of mankind and not just the fraternity. Okay, so that's our system of fraternal conciliation, and that's Masonic harmony in a nutshell. Let's now go to Paul 2. Knowing this, okay, we'll now go into lodge harmony. And our second poll question is therefore that which, okay, is the most important building block for creating and sustaining lodge harmony as we know it, the concept. Is it a competent and respected master? Okay, or is it B, a proactive lodge harmony officer? I'm sure all the harmony officers will pick B. Okay, or it's C, supportive past masters, diba? The wise men supposedly of the lodge. Or is it D, conducive and welcoming lodge atmosphere? Kuya Dennis, can we put up the poll? By the way, what you're seeing there is the Blue Room of Zetland Hall in Hong Kong. Okay. So, continuing our tour of lodge rooms around the world. So, what do you think, brethren? If there is the one fundamental building block to ensure lodge harmony, all of them are, all of these four are. But which is the most important here? And how can we say that the most important? Because there was a survey of this in American lodges, in American jurisdictions, and they do have an answer for this. Okay, sort of like that game show, survey says, right? Yun. Survey says, okay, so this is the actual result of the survey. What do you think, brethren? Is it the worshipful master? Is it the lodge harmony officer? Is it the supportive past masters? Or is it conducive lodge atmosphere? I'm sure you can have a guess here, Kuya Oliver or Kuya Dennis, right? Okay, but what we will have will be the result. Will be the result of the that surveys, or a succession of surveys in different grand lodges. Wow, this time a lot more brethren are faster in answering. Okay, let me just highlight. This is based on a survey of American brethren. So, even if you got it supposedly wrong here, it may not actually be correct in the Philippine jurisdiction because we have not done the survey yet. Maybe this will be the survey. Okay. You have a guess? Very worshipful Dennis?
I do, of course.
Okay.
It's not a guess. I think it's the right answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe we should know first. I'm sure also very worshipful Oliver also has.
And by the way, Kuya Teddy, we're hitting
Yeah.
200 already, among the participants in this webinar.
Oh, okay. That's
And,
nice to know.
and more than 250 in live stream. My goodness.
That's
Talaga.
great to hear. I think it's because very worshipful Dennis, this is an area of Masonic education that I found out when I did the survey is actually not that tackled. So I'm happy that many brethren are here tonight.
Yeah.
Going forward, we're as you know, we plan to integrate more of this in detail.
and they're
Wow.
answering fast. Maybe
Yeah.
in 15
And
seconds we can stop that
okay,
call
yeah.
because we're hitting 70% already. Good, Eddie. Just so we can
Let,
continue on with
let
the.
me highlight, this is the first time we're doing this kind of survey. So whichever is the most popular here may be the correct answer for the Philippine jurisdiction. I am going to give the correct answer as borne out by surveys of American brethren. So it may be different here. Okay, it may be different here.
Okay, let's end the poll and share the results.
Okay, most popular answer, which may be the correct answer after all, okay, for Filipino brethren is D, conducive lodge atmosphere. I'd like to highlight though that actually that is that was number four in the list. Okay, so you'll see which are the most popular building blocks to American Brethren after. But let me highlight that is a survey of American Brethren. So this might be maybe because of our culture. We have a very welcoming culture, and it's a major disincentive if you find the lodge is snooty or not welcoming. Maybe this will be number one for us. I don't know. What I'm saying is for American Brethren, it's not. Now, many lodges, many grand lodges also have a similar office. They don't call it Harmony Officer, but there are some grand lodges who have the office of intercessor or conciliator or mediator. And in those grand lodges, not all grand lodges have this. Uh, the Lodge Harmony Officer actually comes in seventh. Okay, seventh of seventh. Why is that the case? It may be because not all grand lodges have quote-unquote harmony officers or mediators who are formal office holders. If all grand lodges have them, maybe this will be higher, right? And then we have a tie. Okay? Many of you say supportive past masters. They're actually just number three. But I can understand why many of you pick that. Because as you know, I guess you know this, Kuya Oliver, Kuya Dennis, you have lodges where you come in, you know the ones who rule are the past masters, right? What they say uh, is what the lodge is supposed to do. Now, it comes out that that is a major, in the US, that is a major disincentive to lodge harmony. And I think that is the case here. Many brethren who are junior, they don't feel that that's the right kind of mentorship, right? What is the correct answer in the United States for the 51? Well, not all of them participated. I think just half of them did. What is the correct answer there for American brethren in general? A, okay, you must have a competent and respected master. Why? It comes out that for American brethren, okay, the best building block for lodge harmony is leadership by example. And apparently we can see that. I mean, you can see now we're changing presidents, in a few hours there in the US. And there's a lot. There's a lot you can say from tone at the top. So I guess for American brethren, this is the most important. The master has to set the tone at the top, and if he doesn't do it correctly, then that is the most significant stumbling block to lodge harmony. Okay? Having said that, okay, let's go into what are the building blocks. And then with knowing that, we can then have a practical way of, for all of us here, not just lodge harmony officers, do a lodge harmony review to assess the climate of harmony in your lodge. Okay? And with that, if you are in particular a lodge harmony officer, we'll have some tips. We'll have some tips on how you can exercise your implied function. Again, you have two functions if you are a lodge harmony officer. What is the express function? You are assigned by the district temple to do a mediation. That's the express. The implied function is you're supposed to facilitate harmony in your lodge, which may include doing the Masonic mediation process informally among brethren in your lodge. So we're going to address that more after we talk about the building blocks. What are the building blocks? In the United States, these are what American brethren deem, based on surveys, as the 7 most important building blocks in order of impact. In short, 1 to 7 in order of most importance. Again, why is Harmony Officer number 7? Many Grand Lodges do not have the office. I suspect if many Grand Lodges have the office, whether you call it intercessor, mediator, conciliator, that element will probably move up. That's why it's number 7 at present. Okay? But okay, let's go to these building blocks in detail. Okay? Number 1, tone at the top. Okay? Whether you will have lodge harmony in a given Masonic term, according to American Brethren, will depend on who you will elect as your worshipful master. And that's because you look also at our governance system. As I've described it, okay, in previous webinars, our governance system is not like the Philippine government, where we have many checks and balances. Our governance system, our Masonic governance system, is based on trust. The brethren are not electing a dictator, even though the worshipful master is almost all-powerful, or Grand Master is also all-powerful. They're not electing a dictator. They are electing a brother they have full trust and confidence in. That is why, for outsiders, they see him as all-powerful. What is the reverse of that? If you violate that trust, if you are not competent, if you do not deserve respect, okay, if you do not act like a leader, okay, if you do not take the initiative to interact and preserve lodge harmony, if you don't motivate your officers, if you don't go beyond presiding at meetings, okay, that is the most important way to destroy lodge harmony, because brethren will not follow you. Okay? And if you do it right, well, you have one of our youngest grandmasters there. When he was elected grandmaster, I think he was elected grandmaster in his early 40s. Most Worshipful Puno, Chief Justice and Most Worshipful Puno. That's an example. Now, supporting that, the second most important building block is cohesive and capable lodge officers. Starting with, guess what? Take a guess, Kuya Oliver. Very Worshipful Assistant Grand Secretary. Who do you think?
Siyempre, secretary.
Okay. The Lodge Secretary. And I want to highlight this to the Guild of Lodge Secretaries. Your attitude in treating brethren, especially the new ones, that will make or break the culture going forward, because everybody looks to you for lodge administration. And how you treat them will affect the culture in the lodge greatly. Okay? But it's also other officers, whether they can competently do the work. If you have, senior deacons and junior deacons who are always absent, so that the lodge has to get visitors to do that role during conferrals, that destroys harmony. Because brethren will not view you with respect, and don't think you will deserve going up to warden and master, right? You must have committed lodge officers, must have a common vision and set goals. Okay? If you don't, if you don't have that, we say in Filipino, pilay ang worshipful master nyo. Okay? Third, ayan. This is the favorite topic, Kuya Dennis, di ba? Of many lodges. Past masters. Past masters who think that they should run the lodge. Again, that's contrary to our Masonic governance system. As you know, many worshipful masters after, they are purposely assigned the Tyler's role. Not auditor, but the Tyler's role. Because that is supposed to tell them, okay, to highlight to them that as we elevated you, now you return to us. Now you return to us among your brothers, your fellow peers. Okay. Many past masters don't have that, attitude. They should be stewards, but they are not owners of the lodge. You have, Kuya Dennis, you have many, I know you know many past masters who deserve this baton, di ba? Okay. So, you have a war story you want to share with us? Baka you have something there.
Wag na, Kuya Teddy. Baka
Okay.
controversial pa
Baka
topic.
machismis pa. Okay. So, but it is a reality, not just here in the Philippines, also in the US, and certainly in other lodges. A past master finished with his term, he thinks he becomes one of the owners of the lodge. You are not an owner. You are a steward. You must facilitate continuity and stability. You should guide, not criticize or hinder. Okay? You should not expect the incumbent set of officers to do things because that's how you did it. No. Okay? I'm sure you know these two from the Muppets, right? Many past master, they have this attitude. They have this attitude of, this new incumbent set of officer we just installed, they're not half bad. They're all bad. That's an owner mentality. You should not have that mentality. Okay, so if you have a good set of officers, you got a good worshipful master, but you have past masters who will do nothing the entire term but criticize them, you're going to end up with a break in the lodge. Okay? And now here it's interesting because apparently for us, for Filipinos, apparently this is most important. Conducive lodge atmosphere. You must feel welcome. Okay? Why is that so? Maybe kasi culturally, we are a very socializing people. We wanna make sure that everything is comfortable in a lodge. For American brethren, very individualistic. Okay, individualistic culture. One, two, three, maybe more important. Maybe for us, number four is more important. What is number four? Conducive lodge atmosphere. How do you feel when you enter the lodge? Uy, uh, apologies to our international guests and brethren. Do you feel like, uy, ang susungit ng mga to? Rough translation, I think these jokers look down on me. Okay? Or, do you feel that people hold grudges? I must admit, I also had this, and it took some time for me. When I was worshipful master, I held a grudge for a long time with one of my officers, and it took some time for us to resolve that because we had very different ways of viewing the lodge. It's natural. Okay, so that contributes to this harmony. That's something that a lodge harmony officer should pick up. Okay, and let me highlight: one brother can change the atmosphere. Okay, I'm gonna talk about my own lodge again. We had this brother, very strict. Oh, actually, not one brother, two brothers, very strict, two very worshipful brothers. One of them, okay, was purposely assigned to me as one of my mentors to make sure that I memorized the book. The ritual, the proficiency exams. Okay, they didn't want when I entered Chudoro M. Kala 136, the brethren there, they wanted to make sure, just because you're you're the grandson of a brother doesn't mean you're gonna get easy. So it was a very it was a very hard process, but by one of the them who made it, and I'm happy he did, was his brother was very strict. But these two brethren, two very worshipful sirs, one of which was um, uh, was a former DDGM. These two very worshipful sisters were too strict for some brethren. Okay, so what did they end up? They ended up forming their own lodge, also in NCRF when it was still consolidated, Rizal and Eastern Metro Manila. And then the brethren there found them too strict, so they ended up forming another lodge, right? So one brother can change the atmosphere. So you as a harmony officer, you have to make sure that should be, that the brother should be aware of that. It's what we call a Johari's window situation. He may not be aware of it. You have to bring it to him. Okay. And sometimes, okay, you also have to reach out. Okay. Reach out to the families of brethren, especially those who we call Masonic widows, right? The love of my life, right? Who is my ultimate boss. Sometimes she gets really mad if because she cannot participate in what we do, and I have other obligations, right? So sometimes Masonic widows are, I'm sorry, are the loves of our lives, and our children. They have to uh, be educated on why the craft is so important. Why is it, you know I once had a brother, very young brother. He was trying to explain the Masonic fraternity to his girlfriend, who could not understand na, why are you with this old men na hindi mo naman kapir, di ba? Doing this strange stuff, di ba? So we have to, and that can include girlfriends, okay? So officers, they have to be servant leaders, and we have to avoid cliques. We had, I can tell you, another war story of another lodge. They had one clique of members coming from a very prominent public utility, and another clique from the college fraternity of the founder. So eventually, if you had two cliques, they fought, and harmony could not be established because the two cliques were evenly matched. The lodge almost died. Fortunately, Brethren Sona, this is a lodge we should continue. So eventually, after 7 years or 8 years where they could not get new members, many of the old members demitted, and new members came in as affiliate members to give the lodge life again. Binuhay ulit. Okay? And it almost died because of those two cliques. Okay? So maybe for us in the Philippines, this is most important. Conducive lodge atmosphere. Okay? Going to the other three building blocks, also you have to have appropriate programs and initiatives. Okay? We know of many lodges. Okay? Some brethren, and this happens also in the US, they actually want to become worshipful master because they want to tell everybody that they achieved that office, but they don't actually do anything during that term to merit the office. They want to just make it past the 6 month minimum and say that, they were worshipful master. That's a waste of time. Okay? It's a waste of a year. Okay? Because in addition to our Masonic work, you waste other opportunities for the lodge to make a difference. However, on the other extreme, you have worshipful masters who are very ambitious. Okay? In the same month, they are installing a Masonic statue. They have a blood donation drive, and then they have a sports fest. Brethren cannot keep up. And if it's not them who will complain, it is their wives. Okay? So I think it's best practice to follow the principle that if you're going to have, programs and initiatives, maybe it's best that you should have a maximum of one major initiative other than your regular conferrals in any month. So the lodge can focus on it, right? So appropriate programs and initiatives. And then, of course, Masonic decorum and protocol makes a difference. Okay? You must come. I mean, this is a favorite topic of most worshipful Tamrentoy. You must come in properly prepared, properly dressed. Because if you don't, that's disrespecting not just the lodge itself, but the brethren and the worshipful master who took the time to be dressed. You must know your lines. Because if you don't, you might have a brother in the fellow craft degree when we do the passing, which by the way, I've told you is my favorite degree, who will come in, see the two pillars, B and J, and may think that they mean something else and not what not what they truly mean in Masonic ritual because you forgot the lecture if you were the senior deacon, okay? So it really makes a difference if you do ritual properly, if you respect the lodge, come in proper attire and proper decorum, because Masonic work is serious work. And then finally, of course, we have the proactive lodge harmony officer. Okay? How? Not just fulfilling his express function, but his implied functions. Okay? Promoting lodge harmony, which we will now get to. But before I do that, let me highlight, brethren, this cartoon. This is an example of number 3 and number 6 together. Okay? If you look at, I think it is Edict 260, the edict governing issued by Most Worshipful Gabionsa. Okay? That edict highlights that if there is any prompting to be done, it should be by the custodian of the work or the lodge lecturer. Okay? If, for example, a brother is having difficulty with the phrase, it should not be the different past masters. They could end up saying different things like this one. You're in the middle of conferral and everybody wants to prompt you. Of course, they're giving you different words, diba? That's what happens. And of course, you're trying your best. You could end up being embarrassed. Not for yourself, but for them, because it comes out they also don't know the ritual, right? So, okay, do proper ritual and do Masonic work seriously. Okay, with that, if we know the 7 building blocks, we can do. Anybody can assess the climate of lodge harmony in the lodge by answering these 10 questions as they relate to 4 assessment categories. Okay, first, and this is why I think it is most important in the Philippines, how is our lodge culture? Okay, maybe this assessment process is more relevant to us because the first question is, okay, we can best check atmosphere by seeing how many petitions we receive. Because if those who want to apply don't like our lodge, okay, especially in communities where there are many lodges, okay, not in Siquijor, obviously, okay, not in Dumaguete, but in NCR when you can pick any lodge that you want, okay, and maybe even also Siquijor if you don't like, if even though you come from Siquijor, you can pick a lodge. Now, if you're from Cebu, if you're born in Cebu, you can pick the lodge there, right? The number of those who want to petition is an indicator of how welcoming we are. Because, you know, if they see that they're not wanted, that they're not welcome, why will they come in? Second, the mentorship culture. We are a fraternity of men because we, past masters and masters, they mentor those coming after them. Are the past masters really that way? Are they stewards? Are they helpful to lodge officers? Or are they the reverse? Do they deserve this button? The grumpy past masters button? Diba? Oh, I'm sure you know lodges like that. Conducive infrastructure. Okay? Does our lodge look like the refurbished lodges that I showed you from Plaza Ridel Masonic Temple, or kulang, or does it have it's not complete, or it's not the aircon is broken and so forth? That impacts attendance, that impacts participation. Okay, what about attendance? If very few members are attending, it may be because while they are committed, okay, they work or live very far. It's difficult for them to attend. That has an impact. One of my regrets going forward is that I mentored a brother who belongs to my professional fraternity into entering my lodge, not recognizing that it would be difficult for him to attend my mother lodge's meetings. Now he was very interested. He's abroad now. His membership lapsed. He was very interested in becoming a Mason, but because it was difficult for him to attend because malayo, very far, that impacted attendance. Okay, so when you do an assessment, if you're seeing only 7 or 10, the bare minimum of brethren, that highlights that you may have a problem harmony-wise. Okay, then of course you go to competent lodge leadership. Two most important, worshipful master and lodge secretary. Okay, the hidden power of many lodges is the lodge secretary. And hopefully he's not a past master who feels he owns the lodge. Okay, because if he does, that will create disharmony. Okay, and then you look at sustainable lodge operations. Does the are the cash flow of, is the cash flow of the lodge proper? Okay, why? The number one, well, not the number one, but one of the highest uh, grounds for Masonic picks and clashes are brethren fighting over lodge money, and that is one of the gravest, uh, offenses in terms of Masonic uh, misconduct. If you end up uh, doing something funny or tragic with the lodge's finances, okay? Then of course is conferral. Can the lodge capably do its work? Okay, so that's our third assessment category. Finally, of course, you have committed brethren, and they come in two. Specifically as to past masters, are they real mentors? Are they inclusive? Okay, when you come into a lodge, do you feel that that person will mentor you, will be a true male model for you to become a better person? Because if you don't respect the past masters, you may feel that you're in the long lodge or that Freemasonry is not right for you. We have a lot of these orientations now. We give a lot of this. And I'm speaking now to the brethren, not to the guests. If they see a different picture from what we highlight in our orientations or webinars like this, that's a major disincentive from them for new brothers from remaining in the fraternity. Okay, and number 10, of course, individual accountability. Do we have a majority of members committing to sustaining the lodge? If you answer negative to a majority of these questions, 6 or 7 or even 5, that means you have a challenge in your hands, because clearly the lodge has questions of harmony that you must address, whether you're a lodge harmony officer or a worshipful master or even a member. Sometimes it's the elephant in the room. Okay, and sometimes it need not be. It may be just one. If it's true, brethren, that in the Philippines, number 4 is the most important building block because of our culture, because of our Filipino culture, then if you don't have a welcoming atmosphere, number 1, okay, if you don't have that, that might destroy the lodge. Okay, so this is something I hope you can take with you. Easy test to see, to judge the climate in the lodge. Okay, now let's go to lodge harmony officers. How can you best perform your implied function? I think you can best do that by understanding and proactively address conflict. Okay, there are many definitions of conflict. Conflict there, I would go with what I highlight in green. The practical definition. Practical definition of conflict is a disagreement through which the parties, here brethren, okay, the brethren involved perceive a threat either to their needs, their interests, or their concerns. So you can see conflict is, in a sense, takes many forms. In this triangle that I'm showing to you, it takes 3 specific forms. A mere dispute, okay, a disagreement that can be easily resolved with a settlement based on the stated positions of the parties, or a true underlying conflict. The brethren are saying something but have underlying interests that must be addressed. So you must resolve that underlying interest to achieve a settlement of the dispute. Now, in very specific cases, okay, if that conflict is truly deep rooted and goes against the grain or the character of the person, goes against his values, and we're all here because we're all males, okay? Then you have to look at reconciliation, okay? So the bottom of this triangle relates to when you have a deep rooted identity based conflict, the way that's happening now in the United States, and the way that during martial law, when we had to take sides, right? In order to achieve resolution, you must first obtain reconciliation between the differing values that clash. Okay? What are the risks of conflict? Of course, initially you have personal animosity, and then you destroy large culture. When there is no large culture that is sustainable, the lodge will die because of all the demerits that will happen. Members will simply not renew, for example. Okay, so it is important as a lodge harmony officer for you to strive towards conflict resolution. You do that by increasing understanding with lodge harmony, and hopefully achieve greater group cohesion and improve understanding of yourselves individually among the lodge. Okay, how do you do that? How do you address conflict? Well, we can look at no further than our 3 degrees to allow us to proactively do this. Okay, what can the craft teach us? Well, first, awareness is key. Like entered apprentices, they are enter into that stage to learn, right? To observe. Okay, that's what we should do first and foremost. We must be alert to prevent misunderstanding, miscommunication, the development of cliques, okay, or behavior that may encourage, fights, di ba? And it can happen, we had, I can tell you of a major dispute that happened because one grandmaster said something in an elevator that was reported to another grandmaster, and that led to a major clash. Okay, major dispute, di ba? So awareness is key. Okay, if a brother said something that might hurt feelings, be the first to alert that brother. Okay, that will allow you now to assess objectively. So from observation, learning, you now practice. You try to practice consciously what you preach like a craftsman. Determine deliberately the conflict resolution style that you need to take. Is it something that's petty? Like, for example, you have somebody who, always has this, uh, who always, you know, um, uh, does a behavior that irritates brethren. But, you know, maybe something he cannot avoid, like somebody who cannot avoid fighting during meetings, right? Baka it's a medical condition, right? Now there, that's it. It doesn't really. It's very irritating, but it will not really hurt relationships if you understand that it's a medical condition, and it's not something that really is aimed at destroying the lodge. So there, it may, their best conflict style may be avoidance, right? Another uh, another way of conflict style is if you find that a party has another behavior which you can live with. Okay, like you have a lodge secretary who is a past master. Okay, who always insists that every brother, no matter what his case is financially, must pay within the January, or they will risk getting suspended for non-payment of dues. Okay, that's a pretty very strict, maybe hard on the brethren. But if it's the brethren can tolerate it, maybe they can accommodate that behavior rather than escalate the conflict, right? In many cases, however, you achieve compromise where you negotiate and say, okay, this is something that we can live with. That's compromise. Or if you can create, uh, um, You can negotiate something and create value rather than distribute value in a compromise situation. Like for example, the worshipful master wants to have a sports fest, but the brethren, wants to start a sports fest, but the brethren are more keen on sponsoring this home for the youth that they have a particular relationship for. One way of achieving a collaborative uh, settlement to this dispute between values is to encourage the worshipful master to have the sports fest in that home for the youth. Diba? You hit two birds with one stone. So that's an example of collaborating. Unfortunately, there will be cases. Like for example, you find out that a brother has stolen funds from the lodge. Okay? Therefore, in that way, there may be no other, you may have no other choice but to compete or to confront that brother. Compete is when the goal is more important, which is to hold that brother accountable. Okay, as against trying to develop a relationship, because there may no longer be a relationship if the brother comes out to be a swindler, so he deserves to be expelled. Okay, some brethren question the conciliation requirement here. If you have proof that he stole, okay, why go through conciliation? Why go before Masonic trial? Well, the brother might be embarrassed and might offer to make amends by fully paying up with interest and promising not to do it again, save face. That can result from fraternal conciliation and ending up dismissing the charge. But if it's clear bad faith, then clearly you may need to compete or confront. Okay, so once you adopt, you assess what kind of conflict resolution style you need to adopt in any given dispute. You must then assess wisely. You must address wisely, like a master, worshipful master who must address, be Solomonic in your approach. In the fact that you must comprehensively address a situation, resolve the problem really based on the underlying interests, and as much as possible allow brethren to save face. Because if you embarrass them, it becomes more incredibly difficult to mend damaged relationships. Okay? So, just a few process steps here. As a harmony officer, you do not have to go to the district temple of harmony to do the Masonic mediation process. If you need to do it within the lodge, you should be proactive in doing the process. And that process entails, in particular, that you exhibit the behaviors in blue, the three behaviors in blue. An attentive ear, okay? A mindset that is understanding before you put your point forward, okay? And always be mindful of your behavior, your tone, your language, so that brethren do not become confrontational. Okay, with those behaviors, that will allow you to identify underlying issues and hopefully not just distribute value but create value. Worshipful Master wants sports fest. Brethren want, no, let's put our funds in continuing with our sponsoring this home for the youth. O sige, why don't we have both? Let's have a sports fest for the youth in the home for the youth. That you're not just distributing value, you're creating it. And as very worshipful Dennis, learn the hard way. Okay? Make sure you confirm in writing, preferably any agreement reached. Di ba, Kuya Dennis? Because it may happen that you're mediating, okay, but because, there is still some underlying anger there. 5 minutes after you leave the brethren, they go back to fighting. Isn't that so, Kuya Dennis?
Agree.
There are many cases like that. Okay, so these are process tips that will better allow you to appreciate going through what we call our particular brand of Masonic mediation. Okay? What is Masonic mediation? Well, there are 4 stages which are documented here. Okay? Before we go, can I ask you, okay, can I ask all of those present now to see which is the most exhaustive in these stages? I will describe the stages later. Let's just see how you feel, okay? Which generally, there are 4 stages when conducting what we call a Masonic mediation. 4 stages, 4 general stages. Which do you think will get the most energy from you? Is it A, facilitating fraternal dialogue? Is it B, learning to appreciate each brother's story? Or is it C, innovating and collaborating towards what we call whole lodge solution? Or D, reaching and recording agreement on the level? Now, we're going to explain this in detail. Let's just check first what your gut feel is as to these 4 stages, so we can understand your general level of comprehension of what it means to mediate within the craft. Kuya Dennis, can we have our last poll? Okay. Brethren, don't you worry. Generally, this hasn't been taught in Masonic education. So, for many brethren, this will be a first time. Okay? No worries. By the way, what you're seeing now in front of you is the lodge room underground of the Tokyo Masonic Temple. Okay? Or where they call it Masonic Center there. Where do you find that? You ask any Japanese for Tokyo Tower. The Masons, I'm not joking, the Grand Lodge of Japan owns the land under that tourist attraction. And from that tourist attraction, they don't need membership dues actually. They can fund the entire Grand Lodge. I think there are only 14 or 15 lodges based on the based on their lease, the lease from that lease, the proceeds of that lease. This lodge room is next door. It is actually underground, one of the more beautiful lodge rooms in the world. That's in the Tokyo Masonic Center. Okay. Wow, 52%, Kuya Dennis.
Taas na. Maybe
Okay.
once we reach 2 minutes, we can,
Yeah.
I think, all brethren are listening well and actively participating, Kuya Teddy.
We can see that.
Yeah.
And I see also that they're being more definite now. It helps that many brethren are not familiar with the process. So, your guess sometimes is as good as the other brother's guess.
Mhm.
No worries. We're not grading them. Okay, 70%.
Okay. I think we can end the poll.
138 of 190. Yeah. Okay. So here are the results, brethren. I understand those in the webinar can see. I'll describe it for those in the webcast. Okay. The least popular is appreciating each brother's story. You're correct there. It's not very exhausting. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting if you adopt an objective approach. Okay. What is appreciating each brother's story? You must make sure in a mediation, if you're the harmony officer, or if you're a brother, you're not a harmony officer, you're doing a mediation, you must make sure that the brother telling his perspective, his side of the dispute is heard, not just objectively, but subjectively. You must make sure that he understands that he's hearing you. Okay? This is my side. And it may take a long time, okay? But it's not exhaustive because you'll find out, wow, it's very interesting when you hear each other's story. And you have to encourage that. So clearly, some of you answered it, 12%, but that's not the most exhausting part. The next least most popular is reach and record agreement on the level. Correct. Okay. For those who did not select that, you're correct. Okay. Why? Because when you reach this level, you already have a settlement. You just want to make sure that the settlement will stick. Okay, so it's not exhausting. You're just making sure that everybody's on what we call on the level when they achieve consensus. So clearly, that's not that exhausting compared to the potentially other two. Okay. The second most popular, 30%, is facilitate fraternal dialogue. Okay. Actually, brethren, in mediation, I can tell you now, sa mediation, this first stage you will see is actually can be very short. Okay. What is the point of the first stage? You have to make the brethren that you're mediating comfortable with each other, with talking to you and each other. And sometimes that can be very short, okay? Because that leads to them now uninterruptedly giving their respective sides. So, potentially, okay, the longest here is B. And because of that, if you do it properly, A, facilitate fraternal dialogue, can be very short, okay? And it's because it's short, it's not that exhausting, which leads us to the correct answer by one third of you. Innovating and collaborating towards what we call whole large solutions. Why? Because here you're engaging in issue management. Okay, you're finding out what are the real issues. One, second of three, you're also trying to figure out what are potential solutions. Okay, what are potential, and sometimes that can strain your creativity. Okay, and third of three, sometimes you got the issues right, okay? Not just what they were stating, but the actual issues. You've managed to define solutions that, okay, they not ideal, but something that brethren can live with, but ego comes in. And number three, you fail to achieve consensus because, a brother was unduly hurt. So this C, while it may not be as long as the storytelling, or B, this third stage, as a mediator, you will earn your recognition if you do this well because it is the most exhausting. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Speaking from experience, I hope that's clear. So now we can describe the process. Okay? By the way, for those of you who read Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, uh, the the temple room that he describes is this temple room in Washington D.C. That is the lodge room, the primary lodge room in the House of Temple in Washington D.C. Continuing our tour of lodge rooms across the Masonic world. Okay, so what is our last topic? If you recall, I'll go back. Oops, sorry. If you recall, the second pillar, Jakin, okay? We talked about the Masonic mediation procedure provided by our edicts institutionalizing Masonic conciliation. Let me highlight, that's the procedure. If you follow the procedure, there's no guarantee that you will get settlement because mediation is more than procedure. Primarily, it is about managing a process well. I want to highlight that. It is managing a process well. That's why many brethren, they get frustrated. Ano ba yung process na yan? Because the edict it is not provided in the edict. So this is the process that we're going to talk about. The 4 general stages of a Masonic mediation. Okay? Which I've just described to you. Now, having said that, I'm going to give you something even more powerful. Okay? In one slide, I hope what we call the Harmony Officers Triangular Cornerstone. If there's one slide that you should keep from this, it's not the 4 general stages. It's that slide. Because that slide, the reason why it's called the cornerstone is you cannot go wrong if you follow that cornerstone, that guiding cornerstone. So we'll find that out after we describe the stages, and then we'll give benchmarks to what constitutes a good or even a wise Masonic mediator. We'll end with that. Okay, but first, okay, let's describe the Masonic mediation process. What's the role of a harmony officer as mediator? Or anybody who's doing Masonic mediation? First, as a harmony officer, he is a facilitator. He just facilitates communicating and problem solving. What we are talking about here is not arbitration, where he is a private judge. That's not the case here. He is assisting a negotiation between brethren. And therefore, the harmony officer has no decision-making power. Now, some brethren who are not trained in Masonic mediation or mediation in particular, they say, ay, walang kwente pala yan eh. Right? Or for those of our international guests and brethren, what's the use of this brother if he has no decision-making power? On the contrary, brethren, that's where he gets his persuasive power. The fact that, unlike in an arbitration, he cannot decide anything for the parties. It's much easier, therefore, for the parties to trust him, knowing that he has no hand in what they will essentially decide. So with that, he can fulfill better the primary roles as a mediator, facilitating dialogue, okay, putting the brethren with reality testing, okay, making them realize, look, you may feel that way, but I'm not saying you're wrong, but what if you feel this way, right? That's reality testing, okay? Uh, what is an example of reality testing? I was elected. I was appointed the chair of election committee of a major NGO just last November, and in that NGO we had cases involving the disqualification of certain candidates. So I had to have a clarificatory hearing because the disqualifications related to allegations where there was no trial yet. In short, the ones who were disputing who were objecting to the candidates wanted the Commission on Elections, the Electoral Committee, to become the trial committee, to become the judge of the offenses. So there I did some reality testing during the clarificatory hearing. I told the those objecting, look, is it the real role of election committee to be also a trial judge? Okay, isn't that another venue? And they agreed, there's another venue for it. If that's the case, then reality testing wise, if we end up deciding ourselves and we end up as wrong, then we end up disqualifying people who shouldn't have been disqualified. Whereas if we allowed them to run and they turn out to be disqualified, then in that other venue, if it comes out that the allegations are correct, then they would be disqualified after all. So with that reality testing, a lot of those in that situation said, "Oh, nga no. I mean, realistically, is it fair to do it this way?" So that's what you can do as mediator, okay? So that this way you can be a catalyst for resolving the dispute by making the brethren design hopefully the solution by themselves. Okay. So with that, okay, what actually happens during a mediation? This way. In a mediation, in a Masonic mediation, you have the two sides or the several sides, okay, going to the harmony officer, okay, to basically tell their stories. Okay, and this can involve both being together or in private caucuses. You privately talk to another party, so to guide them, because there are some matters that maybe the other party doesn't want to disclose yet. That party must be comfortable telling that to you, so you can guide both parties together. Okay, so the focus here is assisting the parties as an objective referee Okay, not a judge, an objective referee that calls the rules as they negotiate, so that the parties themselves are negotiators. The decision is arrived at by the party. It is not given to them like in arbitration. In arbitration, usually that's done in business, commercial arbitration, because parties want to resolve it right away. So they go to a arbitral tribunal. We don't want to go to court. We don't want to make this we don't want this dispute to take 3 years. Resolve this in within the year or within 6 months. And they resolve it because they both bind themselves. Whatever you decide, we will respect. They tell that to the arbitrator or private judge. That's not the case here in Masonic mediation. In Masonic mediation, the parties go to you because they trust you. They trust you to guide the process for them. What is that process? In general, that process has two phases. A problem defining phase where you make the party sit down, you introduce them, make them comfortable so that they can tell their stories. Now, this is not, fairy tales, because to the side that's telling his or her perspective or story, that is the truth to him or her. It may not be the objective truth, but to him or her, in good faith, that is the truth. Okay? So that storytelling phase may be the longest part of your mediation. It will not be the most exhausting, because I'm telling you now, it'll be the most interesting, because you get to see now, oh, this is something I didn't take into account beforehand, and hopefully that other party will also feel what it's like in the other shoes. So that introduction and storytelling, okay, that can be the longest, but it will be interesting. That will allow you, after you've done that, after everybody has feels that they have been heard, after each brother says, oh, okay, that's what I wanted to say, and he knows he's been heard, that's when you go to problem solving. Okay, so you set the agenda. These appear to be the issues, or are they not? What are we really talking about here? And then you may have to go through private sessions while you're with one party. You tell the other party to, maybe you can work on this part of their story, that whether you find it credible or not, you give them something to do while you're with another party, so that you make them more comfortable, so that when they come back to joint negotiations, you can see more. You can see more, a whole large picture that will emerge. What does that mean? We'll get to that later. So that eventually you tease, or you guide parties, you guide brethren towards agreement. And in the fraternity, we do this through 4 stages, which we call, or we benchmark by the word fair. 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 What are these 4 stages? You saw them in our last poll. First, facilitate fraternal dialogue. Okay? That is why the edict, I think it is 82D, Rason, if I'm not mistaken. 82D. Or is it, I'm sorry, it may be 82, it may be 82B, I think it's 82B of, yes, I'm 82B of Galvez, of the late Most Worshipful Galvez. I'm sorry. 82B actually provides, you're not supposed to drink alcohol before and after, okay, a mediation session. Why? Because you want to make sure that, you're comfortable and you don't behave in a way that will likely create more fights. It's actually a requirement, okay? So facilitating fraternal dialogue is that portion where you get the parties comfortable enough for the next stage, which is appreciating each brother's story. Appreciation does not mean that you acknowledge that the brother is correct. You're just saying, what's your point? What's your side? and try to understand. Try to at least see that there may be another side to the dispute, right? So that second stage can be the longest because, believe me, brethren, when they get going, if they're hurt, they will get going. So this probably might be the longest, because what's the most important is that you make sure that in Filipino, nasabi na nila lahat. I've said everything I want to be said, and I know you were really listening to me. So that latter phrase is important. So after that, then you can go to do innovating and collaborating towards what we call whole large solutions in three ways: issues management, okay, second, solutions exploration, and third, consensus generation. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. This can be actually shorter than the second stage, but let me tell you now, it's the most exhausting but most fulfilling part of being a mediator. And if you achieve consensus, it doesn't end there. You must make sure that, as I said, very worshipful Dennis found this out, found this out the hard way. You reach and record agreement on the level. Oh, in Filipino, ito yung pinag-usapan natin. This is what we agreed with. Okay? Yeah, that's the translation. This is what we agreed with. It's in writing, so that no party backtracks. Okay? So fair, facilitate fraternal dialogue, appreciate each brother's story, innovate and collaborate towards whole large solutions, and reach and record agreement on the level. As you can see now, in our fraternity, we do things very particularly. What does this each mean? Okay? Facilitate fraternal dialogue. In Filipino, magkabrad lahat tayo. We're all equals. Okay? We can resolve differences amicably. Okay? If there was a civil war in the United States, okay, and brethren there from different sides, they were able to still help each other. Remember, let's go back to that. Remember this memorial. May Guerra, there was a war, and you have brethren who still found time to help each other in their most dire needs. They're facing divine providence. They're about to join divine providence, and they still help each other out. You can still talk to each other. That's the point of having a fraternity, to make men better. And part of making men better is making them, comfortable in achieving true dialogue. Here are some ground rules that will be helpful. Make sure that if a brother speaks, nobody interrupts him. Okay? Make sure that you emphasize this is ingrained in Edict 82-B, Galvez. Okay? This is ingrained in the edict. All proceedings are confidential. Okay? It will not be reported. It will not be only statistics are reported during the annual communication. All proceedings are confidential. And as mediator, you will try to devote time to make sure that brethren respect each other. And it's helpful that the edict specific 82-B specifically provides that you cannot drink, no alcohol during, it is not a bull session. Okay, a bull session, you drink, you say what you want. No. Here, you must say what you want the other side to hear, because that's what you feel. And everybody must know that you feel that you've been heard. So it's not a bull session. Now you can drink and you cannot just say what you want. No. You say what you feel is necessary with regards to the dispute. What you really what you believe your differences are. Now this can be very short if you get it right, because once you feel that the parties that the brethren can really talk, then you go to the next stage. The next stage essentially is this graphic. What's your story? You appreciate each brother's story by seeking to really understand, active listening. You get Brother A's perspective, provide a summary, you repeat back to him after he said, whatever, how long it takes for him to say it, provide a summary to show that you understood what he said, and you identify, hopefully what his hopes and concerns are. And he, at this point, would be comfortable because you as harmony officer is guiding him. And you repeat that with brother B and brother C if there are three who are fighting, right? Okay. Let's say three brothers single, they're all fighting over the same girl. Happens. O yun, so mediation. Okay, you get all their issues out. Okay, so listen for issues, underlying interest. Underlying interest is what's really creating the disturbance in them that makes them act, as against what they say, right? They may say that, I don't want to respect my worshipful master because I feel he's irritating. His behavior is irritating. That may be what a brother says. But maybe what that brother is really thinking about is the worshipful master and I, we don't see eye to eye. That may prevent me from becoming worshipful master myself. That's his underlying interest. You have to ferret that out. Okay? So that hopefully, in addition to that, you also look at expanding the common ground. What they are not fighting about, the facts that they agree upon. Okay? So issues, underlying interests, okay, and where they are in agreement. So summarize. You get to do this by summarizing what you hear. That will allow you now to get to the most exhausting but potentially most fulfilling stage, which is getting the parties to own the dispute. Okay? How do they own the dispute? You make them responsible and accountable for resolving the dispute themselves. Okay? Primarily through three ways. And we call this phase iterative because you may have to go through back and forth among the three phases. That's what makes it iterative. Okay? What are you trying to do? You're building towards what we call a whole lodge solution. Your benchmark as a mediator, as a harmony officer, when you're trying to resolve a dispute is objectively, will the brethren in the lodge see any potential settlement that the parties achieve as fair to all involved? That's your objective benchmark. Okay? Why? Because ideally, that's your ideal. It may not happen. The parties might end up with something that they just agreed to because you may have just compelled them to do it, and it's minimum what they can live with. But if your other brethren in the lodge feel na, I don't really think that was really fair for this brother A, that's not a whole lodge solution. Why is that? Why do we call it whole lodge? Remember what lodge means. Lodge is not the place. Lodge is the gathering. The brethren gathered. Are those who are not involved, non-parties, do they feel that the solution arrived at, was it fair? That's the whole lodge. If they think it's fair, then congratulations. But if they think that you left something out, maybe you should continue in this stage until you can better create value. And how do you do that? First, with issues management, clarifying issues and underlying interests, identifying common concerns and establishing common ground, and then working at one issue at a time. Usually, that's what we mean here by establishing an agenda. So you have an agenda. Which are the issues you want to settle first? Usually the most important. Which are not that important. Okay, and then you go down. Okay, and always make sure you maintain control of that list because that will be your compass when you do private caucuses with the parties. Let's say you're going to the other party. You're about to leave. Don't just say, I'll get back to you. Okay? You first, what I say is tip. Tip them off with saying, look, I'm sorry, top them off by saying, this is a summary of what we talked about. So top off the private caucus with a summary, and then tip them to what they should be doing. Maybe while I'm going to the other side, you can work on, like, for example, this part of the issue. Like, for example, you have two brothers who are in business with each other. They're fighting over royalties that should be given. Maybe you can come up with another valuation about the lease that you're fighting about, so that you can be more flexible. Or that's a tip to him of the brother should be working on while you're going to that other brother. So tip and top. So I'm sorry. So top and tip. Top them off. This is the summary. Tip. This is what you should be doing while I'm on the other side. Then while you're doing that, you should be exploring solutions so that you move them away from their initial demands, which may be, the moon, di ba? But which may be unrealistic, okay? So that they can generate options that eventually, are more realistic and which they can live with, and hopefully, with the whole large approach, brethren, even who are not parties, will find fair. Okay, so when you have that list of options, you then go towards consensus generation, review the options, and at all times, look for opportunities to point out what areas are common. Maybe you can have some form of acknowledging that both parties said something that hurt them, that should be addressed, or got them angry, that the parties really didn't mean to. Suggest that the parties maybe speak to each other. So if there's no apology in writing, but there's a verbal apology, even just among them. Okay, and then offer constructive moves to keep the process going. That's your role. That's your role as process coach in this mediation. Okay, so when you get that, when you get to hopefully, not all the time, you might get a solution that's livable. If that's the case, then that's what you have to live with. But if you get a whole large solution, make sure you make that sustainable. You summarize what was agreed upon. Ensure implementation. The 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. Okay, how? Okay. Be realistic, clear and simple. Okay. Maintain a balance. Try to make sure that it's not just one party who's, because it's going to look that the other party surrendered. Try to balance responsibilities in the agreement between the parties. Make sure that the agreement is just how, that whole large perspective. Okay. Now, if there are other problems that maybe arise, provide a way to facilitate further dispute resolution. Okay. Make the parties commit to supporting the consensus that was achieved. Okay. And if you can, even on one sheet of paper, write it out. Have the parties sign it. That way, you make them commit. You make them own what you resolved. Okay. Now, in cases where two important tips here. If alienation has been really deep, you might want to give the parties an opportunity to speak to each other. Okay. So that they can better let go of the past and they can begin restoring the relationship. Remember, brotherly love. Right? Now, in those instances where there is no resolution, okay, at least remind the parties, look, whatever we discuss here, you cannot use outside, confidential. Okay? And, if you breach that confidentiality, that may be taken against you. Okay? See what you've achieved in terms of common ground. And see if the parties can at least agree to that. And always, as mediator, always leave the door open. Okay? What happens if one party wants to proceed? Okay, so you clearly, it's you have to ask the district Temple of Harmony to now issue that certification that proceedings have been taken place and that no settlement was issued. Go ahead, because no settlement was reached. But you can always tell the brethren, look, even if you're in court already, there's nothing preventing you from coming back to me informally and seeing if we can continue discussion. No law will be violated by that. Okay, so that party wants now to go to court because wala talagang solution, cannot achieve agreement. Has that uh, certificate that proceedings have continued, and therefore nobody will be liable for Masonic misconduct because there was a good faith attempt. But just because they're in court now doesn't mean that wala ka ng role, that you don't have a role anymore. Because the parties can go back and say, oh, sige, let's continue discussion. I have had arbitrations, okay? I had a construction arbitration where it involved several billion pesos, okay? The building was it's a major building along EDSA, okay? Where the parties realized that it was several billion pesos. So 3 days before I was going to issue my, it was a tribunal of three. 3 days before we were going to issue our award that the parties would have been bound to, and which the draft was 197 pages, okay? The parties realized, maybe it would be best if we just settle because we don't want to know if somebody will get so much of that several billion or another part. So they settled. Anyway, we're paid. So sayang for us, the award we did na, the draft. But what the heck? The parties agreed. So we just adopted now their settlement agreement as the consent award. What we call a consent award. The parties negotiated after all, and you can help them. Still help them because they are your Masonic brothers. Okay? Now, if there is one slide here that I think all brethren, I hope, will remember and take away from this presentation, it's this slide. If you remember nothing else from tonight's or today if you're abroad, tonight's presentation, I hope you remember this slide because the triangular cornerstone is your guide to resolving any Masonic dispute. Any Masonic dispute. And it is based on what we teach. Brotherly love, belief, and truth. Okay? If you follow this, okay, as guided by your faith, okay, that's why we have that all-seeing eye, as guided by your particular faith, if you follow this, okay, you greatly increase your chances of being a competent and effective mediator. What is this cornerstone? 3 elements. First is brotherly love. Always recognize but do not be governed by the emotions generated by the dispute. Always emphasize reliance on objective metrics and preferably how these are, how you can say that a fact is indeed a fact either because the parties agree to it or a third party says so. Okay? So recognize emotion. This is what I wanted to say. That's what storytelling is about. Okay? Recognize, but do not be governed by emotions. That's brotherly love. Tough love. I understand where you're coming from, but, okay? Let's see how we can resolve this using objective metrics. So with brotherly love, then you can do the Masonic mediation process. As a Masonic mediator, harmony officer, or you just doing Masonic mediation, you can best highlight the Masonic virtue of relief by extending your cable toe in this situation, which you're doing, by competently leveraging your mediation skills and the Masonic mediation process. Know how the process works, leverage it to get better results. 1, facilitate fraternal dialogue. Make the parties comfortable talking to each other. 2nd, okay, appreciate each side's story, each brother's story. Okay, get them to say, oh, this is what I wanted to say, and I know I was heard. And then, okay, then you innovate and collaborate on obtaining a solution that all your brethren in the lodge hopefully will find as fair. And after you achieve that, okay, then you record agreement that is truly on the level. Okay, we are agreeing and committing to this because we want to carry out what was agreed upon, what is settled upon. So leverage the process. Not me, brethren, know of this, but there is our process unique to our craft. Leverage that so you can best arrive at the truth. The truth are the real interests involved in the dispute. Don't focus on the stated positions. Go into the real interests. Sometimes it is the stated position, but more often than not, it's not. More often than not, okay, remember this triangle. More often than not, it's not the stated position that's discussed in a dispute, but an underlying conflict driven by the different interests, individual interests of the respective brothers, or something totally deep rooted. Okay, so use brotherly love and relief to ferret out the truth. Okay, brethren, if you follow this, this can be the cornerstone, practiced properly, for creating a virtuous circle of fraternal harmony. You cannot go wrong with this triangular cornerstone. That is why, uniquely, the cornerstone is a triangle, because it has three elements, which you can easily remember. Brotherly love, don't be recognized but don't be governed by emotions. Relief, extend relief properly through the Masonic mediation process, so you'll arrive at the truth. What are the real interests involved? From those real interests, you can achieve definite settlement if you explore results. Okay? That's why it's a cornerstone. From this, you build your solution to the dispute. Final point. Brethren, what makes an effective Masonic mediator? Generally, there are, over time, you can say that fraternally, in our craft, they exhibit three major characteristics, which are all characteristics of emotional intelligence. The first characteristic is fraternal equality. They recognize that all brothers are equal. And because of that, they are impartial and always try to make sure, primarily through the triangular cornerstone of the harmony officer, that the mediation process is conducted in a balanced manner without unduly affecting one party. Okay, it's balanced the way they conduct it and impartial. Second, they are not resolving the dispute. If you are a mediator, you must adopt an attitude of humble guidance. By that I mean, you are a coach. You are not the judge. You are not an arbitrator. You are a coach of the parties to the outcome either they ideally desire, or, if necessary, something they can live with, which hopefully, in a whole large perspective, they can see as fair. Other brethren will see as fair. For this, you need to commit to the notion that the parties are capable of resolving their dispute themselves. Kaya nga nagmason eh, so that they will become better men. And by doing a successful settlement, you are fulfilling the aims of the fraternity. You make better men. You mentored better men because they resolve the dispute through you. Okay, just a note on technical terms. Mediation is any form of assisted negotiation. Conciliation, as you read it in the edict, that follows the traditional concept of conciliation, which is, in addition to an assisted negotiation, if the parties still don't agree, you provide a formal recommendation, not binding on them, but a formal objective recommendation as to how you think they will best resolve the dispute. So it's sort of like a final position paper on your part to say, now look, I know you don't want to resolve this, but if I were a judge, so that maybe you can resolve this after my assessment, this is how I would resolve it. So that's conciliation. It's mediation plus. Okay, so you have to do that in an attitude of humble guidance. You are not resolving the conflict, you're just coaching them. And again, of course, like our governance system, the fraternity is built on trust. the parties expect you to keep everything they say to you in confidence. Okay? As a professional mediator, you might want to use this tip. I always do it. Okay? I come in a mediation, I have a yellow pad and a white pad. Everything that the parties say, okay, I assume it's a private conference that they will say confidentially to me. So I put that in the yellow pad. It's yellow, highlighted, the confidential. Now, there are instances, especially at the start, they won't say it, but towards the end of the mediation, my mediations are usually family businesses, no? A lot of intra-corporate, ano. Towards the end of a mediation, the parties are more comfortable. That's when I use the white paper. I ask the party, okay, and this can be male or female here because it's a, it's a mediation. Do you want me to put this in white paper so that we can tell this to the other party? So that way, when we come back in joint session, I know which is confidential, which is not, which in the white paper. So now, the parties trust you better. They know that they will always keep you in confidence, okay? If you end up resolving this because of me, you owe me at least merienda, brethren, okay? So, ensure that you never break their trust in you as a neutral. And that's one way of helping it. They never break their trust as a neutral and competent facilitator because that's your role as a harmony officer. And that's why, if you do it very well, 3 years is short. 3 years is short. Okay? The brethren will always want to keep you in that role. Final note, brethren. One of the most tragic historical episodes in our history as a nation, as you very well know, is when a brother orders the execution of another brother. And that happened between two Masons here. That's President Aguinaldo, and as you know, you have worshipful brother Emilio Aguinaldo, and you have also brother Andres Bonifacio. We do know it's a historical fact that brother Emilio Aguinaldo, worshipful brother Aguinaldo, ordered the execution of another brother, right? And maybe that was because maybe, despite being in the same fraternity, there was no one who could have been intercessor, mediator, or conciliator to them, even though they were in the craft. How did this all happen? The painting that you see before you, that's the depiction of the Tejeros Convention. Where Bonifacio was elected Secretary of the Interior, and he was willing to accept that for Aguinaldo, who was elected president. No one. But then before his acceptance speech, Akawan, for those of you who are not Masons, that's what we call non-Masons. Akawan, one of our, should I say, non-Mason, but somebody who, definitely created this strategy. His name is Daniel Tirona. This Kawan, Daniel Tirana, goes up and says, we should not elect Andres Bonifacio because he's not as educated as this lawyer he wanted to support. And this is Daniel Tirona. And because he is a Freemason. Of course, Daniel Tirona conveniently ignoring the fact that worshipful brother Aguinaldo is also a Freemason. Yan, Daniel Tirona. Of course, I may act the same way. That kind of pissed Bonifacio off. I mean, imagine you've committed to this philosophy that, if you know it, is one of the most beautiful philosophies for bettering yourself. And you have this moron saying that you should not be elected because you're a Freemason. That's one of the reasons why, despite being elected, he left the Tejeros Convention. And that's why he reneged on what was agreed there, the election there. And that led them down the path to one brother executing another brother. Think, brethren, think what would have happened if another brother using the Masonic mediation process would have been an intercessor, a mediator, or a facilitator in making these brethren see, what Akawan created, essentially, and making them see their difference and getting them back to amicably settled. It could have happened because, they're both brethren. History showed us otherwise. Like Mabini said, we should learn from history. And with that, I hope you found this very engaging. So with that, after maybe they can contribute, Very Worshipful Dennis and Barry Oliver here can contribute maybe their own war stories. I hope you find this engaging and interesting, and I hope this allows you to better promote fraternal harmony within your lodges. Thank you very much. Back to you, Very Worshipful Dennis.
Thank you very much, very worshipful Teddy Calao, for that very not only informative, but very enriching lecture, particularly in our
Kuya Dennis, what
background.
happens? What happens if a non-Mason did that to you? You should not be, whatever position you want because you're a pre-Mason. Hindi ba magagalit ka rin? Di
Patay.
ba? Patay. Di ba? We
Yeah,
still have that. We still have that.
I know, I
Diba?
know, I know, I know. Apparently, we do. In our midst, even among brethren, I think that still happen. So I think
Yeah.
this is very timely at this point in time, especially that we are about to close the extended year, and I think these are good refresher pointers, for our brethren, particularly those who are having some conflict. And Kuya Teddy, okay, by the way, for all
Yeah.
those who extend their greetings via chat, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us this evening. We have read all your greetings, your felicitation in this evening's webinar. Thank you for joining us. For those who have questions, kindly please use the Q&A. Okay. For those who are
There's
raising
a
their
Q&A.
hand, yeah, kindly use the Q&A. So Kuya Teddy now will answer the Q&A. It's 9:48 on my watch. So at the most by 10 o'clock, we'll be closing the webinar
Yeah.
just so the others
Okay.
can have their dinner and we
Okay.
can move on with things. So Kuya Teddy, please
Yeah.
check
Okay.
the Q&A and answer them.
Okay. So let's go through this very quickly. Brother Tony Zeta at 7:49. How is conflict between two lodges resolved? I think we talked about that already. Okay. So okay. Uh, Brother Jonald Hernandez, Masonic policy dictates that harmony must always prevail. So how come mediation is not mandatory in a civil conflict? No, it is. I'm sorry, Brother Jonald. It is mandatory before you file a civil suit. Where it is not mandatory is if it is an alternative dispute resolution process, like another mediation or an arbitration. That's because the parties, the brothers there, decided to, on their own, design their dispute process independently of the state. But if it's a civil case, yes, before you file the civil case, I hope it's clear, before you file that civil case with the court, you have to go through Masonic conciliation. Very Marbles on Gis, very worshipful sirs. Is a harmony officer needs to be a past master? Yes, he's elected. Okay, that's Edict 82-B. Anonymous brother. I don't know if it's anonymous brother. What if it's a complaint against a brother Mason for abuse of petitioner filed by lodge members, where the respondent brother Mason belongs? Shall the foregoing edicts apply? Yes. If it's brother to brother, yes. Because for all you know, it may be a misunderstanding, even though there's an allegation of abuse. It may be a misunderstanding that can be threshed out. Good faith attempt at reconciliation. Okay? Always hear the other side first. Brother Jonald again, do you consider a good faith attempt the resort of a brother to Masonic mediation when he brings the case to the attention of the large harmony officer, but due to large intramurals? Oh, interesting. No certification to that effect is issued. In this case, if there is Masonic mediation and despite such mediation, the parties do not want to resolve matters, then the brother who wants to take it to court can should compel the District Temple of Harmony to issue the certificate. If the DDGM and the Harmony officers which compose the District Temple of Harmony don't want to issue in bad faith that certificate, okay, that can be subject to that can be Masonic misconduct, because then that's already bad faith. Next question. Please emphasize the importance of electing the Lodge Harmony officer. Yeah, we did that. I have noticed that a handful of lodges do not actually conduct election. That's maybe because, Brother Jonald, many brethren are not aware of the importance of the role. I assure you that going forward, there will be further education on this. Okay? Anonymous attendee, very worshipful sir, there is a debate topic in our lodge which should be the basis of a centennial year. That has nothing to do with mediation now, but this is off topic, but let me tell you, it should be the charter date, because that the basis of a centennial year is charter date, because that is the date the lodge is placed permanently on the rolls of the Grand Lodge. So for counting the centennial, if you ask me, I think it should be the charter date. Okay. Again, that's the last. We should stick to what's on topic. Can we say, for the sake? Okay. What if it's a complaint against a brother Mason for abuse of a petition? Okay, so I talked about that. Can we say, for the sake of harmony, in deciding anything about a certain issue, even if it violates the Constitution and edicts, we tolerate it? No. And allow decision agreed by the brethren? I have no clue what you're talking about. Clearly, if Masonic misconduct occurs, that can be the basis for a complaint that you should take up. And then, of course, if it's between brethren, Masonic conciliation requirement will apply. Harmony officer being elected is a Tyler. That's actually allowed. Okay, he can hold two offices at the same time. Last question. If it's a labor case between brothers, will Masonic mediation precede the external filing with Dole NCMB? Yes, it will. You might ask, okay, will that hurt? Will that hurt the labor case? No. The fact that you did not follow Masonic conciliation requirement will not hurt the labor case. But if you knowingly did so, okay, if you knowingly filed without going through Masonic conciliation, that can be a basis against you for Masonic misconduct and getting you disciplined by the Grand Lodge. So it will not affect the labor case, but it will definitely, if it's done in bad faith, if you purposely avoided the Masonic conciliation requirement, it can definitely affect your membership status as a brother of the craft. Okay, so I think that's it. Very worshipful Dennis, 9:53.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Can I? Wala na.
Wala na.
Meron pa.
May humabol
Can I just go for, can I just highlight our future last three topics?
Next. Sandali, bago. Last.
Yeah, go ahead.
Huli. After a lodge
Okay.
is temporarily arrested or suspended, will there be a mediation from the GLP or district officers before ANCOM for the final verdict or decision from the GLP? Tingin ko parang kilala ko to nagtanong na to. Sige.
There's the Masonic mediation or
Will there
okay.
still be daw mediation?
If there is, wait lang. If there is a dispute, that's when you conduct Masonic mediation between the brethren. Okay? The arresting of a lodge, you have to look. It's specified purposely in Edict 82-D Rason. You can look it up. 82-D Rason. Masonic mediation requirement does not in any way curtail the discretion of the most worshipful Grand Master and the Grand Lodge in providing appropriate sanctions or measures to curtail Masonic misconduct. So, if the Grand Master suspends or arrests a lodge, that falls under that provision in 82-D of Edict 82-D Rason. Okay? The Masonic, let me repeat, the Masonic conciliation requirement is not a constraint in any way on the Most Worshipful Grand Master or the Grand Lodge adopting measures or other adopting any measure to address specific Masonic misbehavior. Okay, so that's clear. That's clearly in 82-D.
Okay, I think that answers all, Kuya Teddy. And maybe you can proceed
Let's go
now
to
with,
future topics.
yes.
O, tamang-tama. Last 5 minutes. Brethren, next February, we'll talk about Masonic history. You'll find this interesting. We'll talk about all the fake news that crops up. When fake news masks Masonic history, we'll talk about how you can respond to false allegations against a craft. And then in March, especially, and I'm talking about all Masonic writers out there, March of this year in Masonic philosophy, we'll be talking about seeking Masonic light, pointers for doing personal Masonic research. Okay, that's in March. I know many Masonic writers will take note of that. And finally, in April, to wrap up our extended term, we will move our focus to our appendant bodies, not just Scottish and York Rites, but also Order of Eastern Star, the Order of the Amaranth, the Order of Demolay. We'll all look into the ritual systems in general, no secrets, so that we all can have a better understanding of how they fit in the Masonic family. Just a caveat, that's April 21, that's a day before the ANCOM. Very worshipful Dennis, we may move that to the week before, right? Just for
Yeah.
that, just for that webinar.
Yes.
So with
Might
that,
be too busy at that time. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to all of you, seeing all of you here for our last 3 lectures this series. Thank you very much.
Okay. Once again, thank you very much, very worshipful Teddy. It's been a very fruitful evening. A lot of the brethren who participated, imagine, we still have 160, who stayed on, and we picked up about 210. So just imagine how interesting this topic is, and we got a lot of
Maraming pics.
yeah,
Maraming pics and clicks.
I know, and we got a lot of participants also via Facebook Live. So we thank all the Cable Toe team for supporting us in this and disseminating to the brethren. And all those who participated, again, thank you very much. And we really appreciate your support and your joining our webinar series. And we hope that it helps address, the boredness during a pandemic. And we do look forward to seeing you all soon again next month specifically. But then again, please take note of the announcement of our Most Worshipful Grandmaster that we will be having our annual communication in April as scheduled. That will be on April 22, the Thursday, and then the installation of the new Grandmaster will be the following day on a Friday. So to each and everyone, just wait a while, and the edict regarding this will be out soon, maybe in a couple of days, and definitely we will all be preparing for that. So again, thank you very much, very worshipful Teddy. Rockstar ka talaga, kakaiba ka talaga, my goodness. Sana paglaki ko, maging ganyan din ako. And to all those who participated, very worshipful Oliver, and to our Most Worshipful Grandmaster, a pleasant evening to all. It's 9:59 and
right on time, 10
right
o'clock.
on time, 10 o'clock, and we do look forward to see you again next month in our webinar series. Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. Maraming salamat.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.